the software world, I can't think of a case where anyone knows the right answer for even above an 80% threshold to maximize impact with customers, to say definitively, build me exactly this in exactly this time frame, and this will be your guaranteed result. The team of teams model gives you that flexibility.
Hey everyone, welcome to Dev Interrupted. I'm your host, Dan Lyons, and today I'm joined by Bob Ritchie, Vice President of Software at SAIC, which stands for Science Applications International Corporation. Awesome name. Bob, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you be on the show today. Let's start by giving our audience the opportunity to know you a little bit better. For our listeners who may be unaware, what is SAIC? What do you do there?
Awesome. Yeah. So SAIC is a federal government, federal systems integrator. And what that typically means is government contract work around engineering and science and research and development and IT managed services to drive solutions for the federal government, whether it's intel community, Department of Defense, or federal civilian agencies. And what I do there, I have the privilege of leading the software organization within the company. So really focused in on how do we make SAIC a software company that happens to deliver solutions for the federal government.
Yeah, you've been there a while, like 15 years, right?
Yeah, I had a
long time
stint, where I was part-time consulting employee of SAIC from 2016 to 19, where I had the privilege of working for a really kind of forward-leaning leader at Capital One named Gil House. And then when he moved to JP Morgan in 2019, I had the chance to come back and take over the software org at SAIC full-time, and it just seemed like the right time to come back.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the size of the org that you got under you?
So my direct line kind of team of teams model, we're at a little over 200 folks, and then dotted line software within the whole company's about 4,500 engineers.
That's great. We're going to dive into team of teams. We're going to talk more SAIC. I went to the website and I just have to say, like, the first two, I guess, it's like a banner that scrolls, left to right. Says some of the coolest things: creating the connected battle space. That sounds interesting. And then the next one is mitigating drone threats. So it sounds like you get to, that's like very, very interesting stuff.
There's definitely some unique, and we'll call it exquisite problem sets that especially in the Department of Defense and the intel community, that you wouldn't necessarily run into elsewhere. And so it really gives a wide range of, not just building a web app or not just building a couple APIs type of thing.
Yeah, pretty cool. Now, another thing about you, kind of like a more personal thing, I hear you played college ball at VTech. Is that true?
So I'll have to put air quotes of played. Yes, I was an unrecruited walk-on, but yeah, I got to play. I had the privilege of playing Division I basketball in the Big East and ACC because my time there kind of spanned both conferences, which was really cool from growing up in the DC metro area and with Georgetown and Maryland and Duke and UNC, always on TV to then get to play, thankfully, in the same conference that, Coach K and Roy Williams and those guys were all still coaching when I played. So that was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I hear. I mean, that's a big time conference. And I know you're saying, I walked on, but you made the team. Even making the team as a walk on, the talent and the recruiting is insane. So that's really cool. So speaking of teams, it leads us well to like this teams of teams stuff. So I know you have a lot of opinions on how teams should function in the software delivery process. So let's talk about that a bit. What is a team of teams model, and what is a leader model?
Sure. So I'll work backwards. So especially in federal government contracting, and just by nature of the way, let's say, the Department of Defense's historical way of operating in a command and control kind of leader top-down structure, a lot of historical federal system integrators model themselves in that same kind of pattern, because zipper principle, you want to align your leaders to their leaders and be able to speak the customer's language. Some of the challenges with that, though, it creates, and it's really more of a relic, I'll say, of the Industrial Revolution era of having this kind of cog in a machine mentality, and then system of systems build up, and everyone just knows their own role in the machine of what's my job as a cog, and the next layer up. And it creates a top heavy and top down kind of micro management ecosystem that it's just not what resonates today with kind of knowledge work and thought work that in art form like software development is in today's day and age. And so team of teams model kind of presents a different concept to that same construct to, instead of having this hierarchical, command and control, top-down micromanagement, the leadership strategy pivots to creating a more of an environment where there's a shared vision and a shared mission and shared kind of principles and values that all the teams adhere to. And then the teams are granted a level of autonomy that then lets them define and, discover their own purpose and where they fit in that vision. And oftentimes it then provide invaluable feedback of how that vision needs to be altered based on what they're seeing, as opposed to kind of that historical, I'm just being told thou shalt type of model.
Yeah. Are you saying the thou shalt type of model, is that the leader model? Yeah. Is that a leader model a little different too?
So at least the way I interpret leader model is, we'll just say, because I'm a software guy, we'll say it's the difference between the imperative and declarative state, right? Like a top-down command and control requires imperative scripting all the way down to get exactly the outcome that you're looking for, where a team of teams model is more, here's the direction we're going, this is where we're headed, this is why we're headed there, most importantly, and allows kind of the teams to self-organize around that mission, around that purpose, and deliver the outcomes at I guess what I've experienced, a much more effective rate.
Are you saying to yourself, like, every day, okay, like we're a team of teams model, and therefore I need to act a certain way as a leader? Do you have to remind yourself not to be I don't know, it's kind of like Bill Belichick. It's like, do your job, just be a cog. Don't think do what I tell you and we're going to win the Super Bowl. No, you can't think like that. So how do you go about your day to day?
I'll say it certainly takes practice. When I fortunately had the benefit of seeing this model in action, like I mentioned under Gil House, at really massive scale at a Fortune 100 company. So that it kind of seeded in my mind, okay, this is an effective model. It works. And so I'm already kind of biased, I'll say, towards the model works. As far as having to cognitively think about it, yes, because I'll say there's one other dimension of kind of the command and control structure that feels very natural and human, right? And especially for type A people to feel like I need to be in control and I want to tell everyone exactly what to do. So it's just one of those things that you just have to be aware of, that kind of natural impulse to react to a situation, and just, take a beat, think about it, and really kind of drive every decision through that value lens of, is this what's best for the environment I'm creating for my teams? Am I being clear in the communication with teams, which again, the team of teams model allows a lot flatter structure too, which then enables some of that kind of cleaner communication.
What do you do for a team leader that's not performing in a team of teams model?
Well, so at our current scale, I'll say that situation hasn't arisen too often, but when it does, it's really a excellent second order effect benefit of the team of teams model is that the team self-polices to some degree. So you're already, if something gets escalated, it's only in the cases where the team hasn't been able to self-adjudicate. And the long-standing teams aspect also creates this natural, it's almost like cliques in school. Like humans are social animals, so they're naturally going to organize into these groups of people that they enjoy spending time with, that, their quirks and their, foibles, they all like and kind of balance each other out. Where one of those player coaches is starting to drift away from this, hey, I'm supposed to be a servant leader within my team, and more, kind of thinking about, what's my own kind of fiefdom to build out, or, now bridging into that command and control kind of mindset. The team is really that first line of defense to say, you just check them, because it's just like your friend, if your friend's going sideways, you're like, hey, this isn't who you are. Right. So that gives you at least one level of defense that doesn't require a lot of top-down prescription or engagement. But then certainly when there's a circumstance where someone is just moving completely orthogonal to your values and principles of your team and of your ecosystem, you have to have those sort of kind of coaching opportunities to say, look, that's not who we are as a group. That's not who you are as a person. I know you to not be that way as a person. And let's revisit how you got there and really start to drive at the why of what's going on. And in certain circumstances, sure, it can lead to an action where maybe the team needs to self-elect a new leader. And again, I'm a nerdy software guy, so everything to me, it's like a gossip protocol within, this distributed system. The teams can elect their own leaders. The player coaches themselves weren't appointed top down. It was the team all agreed that, like a James English is the right leader for Silence of the Lambdas, or, a Brad Staten's the right leader for Team Vulcan. We also encourage all our teams to come up with really, clever names and kind of part helps.
So they actually self-elect as opposed to, okay, like tell me how that works. So I'll give you like a scenario. You got to get projects done, bring a group of people together. This is what I would do as a leader that I think have all the skills needed to get that project done. And then they just say, okay, we're voting on our leader.
No, well, so in the context of a given project, at least the way our model operates is we bring an already existing team to execute any projects that need to get done. The forming of the teams and the election of the leader is more on the opposite side of the spectrum from the growth model, right? So when we're going out and looking at how do we grow our capacity of teams, we're looking for those longstanding groups of people that maybe have been stifled at their other opportunities, other companies, elsewhere in the market, where they themselves show an aptitude to grow a team. And so we'll pull them in and then they can hire up and grow their own team. So that's one model for growth. But the self-elected leader aspect is, okay, this person's forming that team, so naturally becomes a self-election. But we've also had cases where a long-standing team would say, like the player coach on that team says, hey, I'm feeling like my technical growth is taking a backseat to the servant leadership responsibilities of the player coach. He brings that to us and to his team. And his team then self-elects, well, we totally hear you. You've served us well for 2, 5, 10 years. And now we're going to give this other, great engineer an opportunity to lead the team. And so that's where, that self-election comes into play. It's not necessarily when forming around, delivering an outcome.
It's like you have to have the ultimate self-awareness to say, hey, I want to grow. I want to be on the team, but I need to grow my skills in another area. I'm going to help promote someone else. You got to be really kind of trust in yourself and the team.
Absolutely. And for the most part, that's where the team kind of takes on the form of a nuclear family structure, right? Like, so a family is going to care about that nuclear family and understand if someone says, hey, look, I want to go to art school. I don't want to follow in your footsteps and become a lawyer, right? Like those sorts of things is something that a family that cares about each other will always be supportive of. And if you don't have that longstanding team model, you lose it. That's something in a command and control structure that could never happen because everything's going to be, well, you're my cog. You can't stop being my cog.
I don't want to do what you did, Dad. I want to go to art school. Yeah, we hear that story all the time. And the good families deal with that in a good way, and bad dynamics like, no, you have to go eat what I am. That's like the worst case scenario.
Yep.
Why do you think that there's so many leader models, which you were describing as kind of the opposite of the team of teams? Why do you think so many leader models out there?
I think a lot of it is more, we'll say, remnants of what worked really well, we'll say from 1950s onward in the growth of a lot of the industries and markets that we're playing in today, in that it was very ordered and the problems weren't as, we'll say, complicated as maybe they are today. And so an assembly line type of model might have fit better. Although the term software factory is very in vogue, it's an uncomfortable term for me because I think of software as an art form. So putting the factory connotation on it makes stuff. But the software industry, if you look at 70s, 80s, 90s, it was more about cranking out continuous product, and even just industry at large was who can crank stuff out as fast as possible. And the command and control structure naturally feels like, well, if I tell you exactly what I want, I'm going to get the most efficient result. The challenge is how complicated and complex the world has become. No one actually knows what they need. They might be able to imperatively describe what I want. And that model is where the team of teams model is an existential imperative to jump to.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if we know what we want, if we're on an assembly line, we're making the same shit every day. Yeah, like I'm going to tell you how to do your job, how to be more efficient, and we'll crank out more widgets for sure. But sometimes, especially now, you're saying, and I can see this too with like my company, Linear B, and as we're growing, we're doubling in size and all of that. It's like, no, I don't know the answer to the problem. I'm giving you a problem, team. We'll figure it. If I knew exactly what to do, I don't know, I just do it myself. Like, no, your job is to go find solutions and implement it. Do both.
Yep.
So yeah, I can totally see that as well. You mentioned something You said like you want everyone in your company to be at most 4 steps from the CEO. Why is that so important to you?
So that's my ideal state in any company, especially ours, because of the importance. In order for a team of teams model to thrive, there has to be that cohesion of vision and purpose. And as you add layers between, say, the individual contributors on a team to that CEO's vision, you start to dilute the messaging. Personalities naturally come into play, and maybe you'll have a personality shift or pivot the messaging of what the CEO's vision actually is. And so those, at most 4 layers, is really just a representative of, as you get beyond there, I've observed that it starts to break down that kind of a clear, crisp, what's my purpose? What is my team? What's the problem space? So when I say, here's a problem, go solve it, they have a frame of mind, of what the vision of our company, what the business model of our company, what our organization is striving towards. It just really prevents that communication breakdown, which then in turn, the team of teams model is you can think of it as almost fragile in that sense, that if you start to layer in too many command and control structures between the teams and the tippy top vision, the teams themselves it's almost like you've clipped the rose off a bush. Eventually the rose is going to die because it's too far removed from its sustenance.
How do you think that kind of this team of teams model, and then staying like closer to the CEO, which is really a translation for, the vision, or are we all rowing in the right direction? How do you think all this affects developers, software developers?
Well, so I think at the end of the day, I can't speak for everyone, but myself and most developers that are in my organization got into software because they like to build things, right? Like, we all did Legos and, connector sets and everything as children. So we got exposed to software. Some of us at very young ages and said, oh my gosh, I can build things without physical world constraints. Let me go build. And then you start to say, well, are the things I'm building, is anyone finding them valuable or they're useful? And so the team of teams model lets them not only enjoy that passion of building and creating, and really the art and craft of software, but then see it connected to a bigger vision, something bigger than themselves, something bigger than their team. And so you get kind of the benefit of both having autonomy, but then also your purpose. So like I'm a big Daniel Pink subscriber in terms of motivation. That helps you find, that joy and happiness in your day-to-day life, because you're seeing it come to fruition.
Who is the person with motivation?
Oh, Daniel Pink. He wrote a book called Drive back in the aughts, or early 2010s. It's a really wonderful set of case studies around motivation 3.0 and how autonomy, mastery, and purpose for thought workers and knowledge workers specifically, which I consider software engineering in that kind of bucket. It's more than carrot and stick models of kind of the command and control structure, right? Yeah,
I highly remember the era everyone was talking about this book now.
Yeah, the anime. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But we'll include it, and it's always good to call out what people are reading, or what you're getting motivated by. Last question in this area: do you think for software teams, team of teams is always better, or do you think that there's a maturity state or a situation where the leadership model is better?
So I'll say, when it comes to execution in a dynamic, landscape, team of teams is almost always better. I can't think of a model where, when we're not 100% certain of exactly what we want and what we need to deliver an outcome, the team of teams model gives you that flexibility. And like you said, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm giving you a problem to solve. Go solve it using this, here's the ecosystem environment and framework. There are situations where there is a discrete, so I wouldn't think maybe in medical, right, market, that there is a prescriptive way to do this surgery. Let me caucus as a team, and I'm going to operate on you, but I'm going to come up with what my team thinks right. So there's certain fields like that. In the software world, I can't think of a case where anyone knows the right answer for even above an 80% threshold to maximize impact with customers, to say definitively, build me exactly this in exactly this time frame, and this will be your guaranteed result. It can happen, right? You can have a good result where you meet 80% of your market, but if you start out on that path, it's a really difficult thing to do. That you get that 80%, you get some success there, to then pivot to ever reach that other 20%, it would be a real challenge.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Now, another thing that you're not shy about is investing in your teams.
Yeah.
You've said that leaders should be investing until it hurts in continual learning. Let's unpack that a bit. What does that mean to you?
So the foundational responsibility I see, and this is just to plug some other folks, Simon Sinek, and everything he does will start with why, and leaders eat last, and the infinite game. The foundational responsibility of leaders is to create an environment where your teams can thrive, right? Like he makes all these anecdotal quips about the CEO is responsible for the people who are responsible for the people who are responsible for the outcomes. They're not responsible for any outcomes themselves. They're responsible for creating that ecosystem. And so I think continual learning is such an important dimension, not only from the three pillars of motivation 3.0, right? Mastery, having that opportunity in your day-to-day lives, right? We spend so much of our time at work, throughout the course of our life. If I don't have the opportunity at work to find some level of mastery in a craft or in multiple dimensions of my craft, I'm going to seek an opportunity where I can go get that done. And cogs don't necessarily, right? So this is a real dichotomy. Cogs don't need continual learning to do their job. They know exactly what they did yesterday and what they're expected to do tomorrow. And there's certainly a place in the world for that type of work. I just don't see it as in software. And so specifically in software, and we'll say cloud and site reliability engineering and data science and data engineering, it's such a craft and art form that is continually refining and continually evolving. If you're not, as a leader, investing in those teams to stay as sharp as possible, you're doing a disservice to your teams. Eventually your team skill sets are going to erode, or the actual folks who subscribe and really thrive in a team of teams model are going to go seek, opportunities elsewhere that the learning is there.
So what do you specifically invest in for developers in terms of training?
I'm a huge proponent of access to content as a table stakes for any, as a term of employment, as if you will. So access to, just shameless plugs, Linux Academy and A Cloud Guru, which are now, so A Cloud Guru acquired Linux Academy, and now Pluralsight's acquired A Cloud Guru, which are three of the premier kind of, self-paced on-demand learning content platforms. Having unlimited access to that content for every team member across every team, whether solid line in my organization or in the company, is like a foundational table stakes almost, right? You need to make that a part of employment, not something that someone has to come ask for. But really where the investment comes, especially in the federal systems integrator market, because so much of our business is time sold, right? That a government contracts to you, it's almost like a lawyer with billable hours. If you're not billing to your customer, you're offset, you're not generating revenue, and so you're costing. And so that's where the investment happens, is how do you carve out time for your folks to not only have access to that content, but actually immerse in it and, go and take that training, do some on-hand labs, do some experimentation. But that's, again, where the team-of-team model really benefits, because it doesn't mean and if I'm a cog, I have to carve out 20% of your time. The whole machine stops while that cog is doing training. The team can then self-pace, where maybe 2 members of the team are focused on training this week and 2 others next week. And maybe a month from now, then someone else needs to say, I'm going to take a boot camp for 4 weeks. The team can self-organize, and the team gets itself to that billable metric. It creates a brand new model in the federal system integrator space by which you can do continual learning without having this exorbitant kind of overhead costs, which is really the secret sauce that we're trying to bake in at SAIC.
Do you have any guidelines of how to carve out time? Because I think that's one of the most difficult things, is actually making the time available to learn and improve. Do you have any tips there?
So I would say, don't be shy in budgeting cycles to ask for what you want. Right. So we say you're going through a quarterly or, 18-month or 24-month forecasting of your budget, and you're projecting growth of your teams. Say, this is the amount of time I need to carve out. So this is the amount of overhead funding I need. Worst case scenario, you get pushback. Right. And then, so say you get that pushback. Step 2, now I've got that pushback. How do I get creative about creating that time? Which is probably more to your question. And that's where you work opportunities for that team to work on programs that would provide that same level of learning experience. So rather than go and say, I'm going to do a boot camp and get AWS developer certified, can I, as a team, get signed up and work on a project where I'm going to get exposed to the exact same learning, but I'm going to get more hands-on, less textbook. And then at the end of that, working that customer engagement, you've had real world experience that's equipped you to go get an AWS certification. So really tying that work they're doing as part of their career growth and treating the work opportunities as learning opportunities and helping the employees see that it's not only you're delivering value to your customer, but you're expanding your growth in cloud and Kubernetes and full stack and React, et cetera. And so that's where we get creative with the team of teams model to invest in learning without necessarily having such a bottom line impact.
What are the pushbacks? So I would typically, you'd have to justify maybe to a CEO or sometimes like a CFO, like a non-technical folks, about why it's important to do training. Do you have any way that because it costs money or it costs time, and time is money. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Do you have any ways that you've positioned it to someone that you're trying to convince?
Yeah. So there's a lot of qualitative things you can do, right? Like cite studies and Harvard Business Review and things like that of investing in continual learning and the long-term improving effects that it has on your consistent quality and the type of talent you're attracting and retaining. But quantitatively, there's actually a really cool company out there called Blue Optima that we've been working with the past year, which then it scans and provides an analytic vantage point, just looking at your source code repositories. And if you're using, Jira or some other Agile SDLC tool, will actually create insights into how your teams are performing. So you can tie tangible results to say, by investing in this. So say I do a learning campaign where I want to focus on getting a bunch of people CKAD because Kubernetes is a big push. I can show quantitatively how that investment in training has resulted in more maintainable code, better solutions for our customers that then differentiates us in the market to go win new business. So you create that business case for leadership to say, it's not just about investing in people, which I wish it, altruistically, I wish it was just about investing in people. But like you said, at the end of the day, these are businesses. So how do you quantifiably tie that to a business case? You can show how this objective evidence led to these additional new contract awards. And so that helps justify kind of that perpetual motion machine.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we're doing a lot of this at Linear B, engineering metrics, things that help every developer save time every day, get their work done faster. And here's what I've learned that I'll share with you and the audience. Usually, if you're talking to a non-technical type person, the thing that they care about is delivering projects on time. Project delivery, that's the output that they can see from an engineering organization when they're not in the details. Features, bugs, happier customers. They can even understand, okay, production is more stable. I can get that. And, features are being delivered. And there's a lot of metrics out there that we talk about on the show. Predictability. Are you doing what you say you're going to do from a delivery standpoint? Cycle time, bugs found in production. We can get all the way down to how long are our PR cycles taken, making them faster. And I have found that you can use this type of data to then do two things. One, you can justify, okay? But two, it's really about gaining trust because you can say, here, I'm going to visually, okay, I'm asking for a bunch of training. It costs money and time, but I'm going to be accountable. We're going to meet every week. I'm going to talk to you about our project predictability. I'm going to talk to you about our engineering health metrics, how this is impacting it. That's where I've seen buy-in come from.
Yep.
So just a little tip for the audience of what has worked for me. Are you ever afraid of investing in people and having them leave? Does it matter to you if you make like kind of this large investment and people are going to like leave or something like that?
Not really. So it's kind of a cool, and I hate to say that everything is so foundationally rooted in the teams model. The teams, when I say there's a long-standing team, most teams that I've ever experienced in my career stick together whether people leave the company or not. And so I'll give an example. When I left SAIC full-time to go part-time and work at Capital One, I still was a very daily active member of my former team's, their own private Slack workspace called a happy place, right? Like that, hey, we want to get in there and we want to still collaborate and talk about ideas. And so the team model, whether they leave the company and then they still stay connected to that team. And what I've seen, at least in our marketplace with the federal government, there is such a demand and a need for growing these high performing continual learning teams that for the federal government to meet its objectives, and especially in the DoD and IC, I see this, we need to create a broader defense industrial base that adopts this model. So I still feel like SAIC has done its part. If we've trained up a bunch of really great engineers and they've got these great new opportunities outside of the company, they'll take that model and evangelize it wherever they go. Now we're still fulfilling and tied to our purpose as a company, which is to deliver exquisite solutions that, power the federal government forward. So I don't have too much fear of that. And then I'll say, because of the team of teams model and that connective tissue, we get a lot of boomerangs like myself, who when new opportunities come up, they're still, I'm still connected to my team. I'll come right back because I stayed in contact. I'll pick up right where I left off. We already share a common set of principles and values. It makes it really easy to come back. So that's how I at least communicate that, to my leadership, that there's no risk in training someone and leaving. It betters everyone.
You know what I've been thinking about a lot lately? Hiring is so difficult right now. Everybody's talking about it, right? That's like a global thing that's happening. And so what that means is sometimes, or maybe a lot of the time, you cannot find the perfect person for the position right now. But what I've been thinking about is maybe I can find the perfect person plus some training, plus their ability to improve. They'll be the perfect person in 6 months.
Yep.
Or a year or a quarter. So I've been starting to think a little bit differently, see if this resonates. Let me kind of like measure like how I evaluate the team is around ability to improve, as opposed to like, can you take the learning and do something with it, as opposed to where you are right now. Do you ever think about that with your team?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'll even expand upon, like, maybe instead of finding the perfect person, I can find someone who with the right training and the right environment could become the perfect person. And yeah, that with the team model, that maybe it's not the perfect person, but it's a perfect fit on this team because of personalities and principles and values that, even if they don't even become that perfect person that I was looking for, they're still going to be a valuable contributor to that team. So there's Gary Vaynerchuk says what the hire fast, fire faster, promote fastest. And I'm not a huge advocate of the latter two, but definitely the team model widens the aperture to find the right fit for a team, as opposed to looking for the right fit on this particular project or this particular role. And like I said, then the equation ends up being your team has this growth mindset. All your teams have this growth mindset. They're continually sourcing and growing good fits for their team in context of knowing that shared vision of the CEO, because they're not so far removed. They can keep growing. And then when the opportunity pops up, it comes into a Kanban board and we say, hey teams, who's got somebody, or which team has a couple of T-shaped skills that would fit this unicorn that's being asked for? And maybe instead of one body, we have 3 people that charge down to the equivalent of a full-time engineer, because there's not one unicorn that's got 5 years Kubernetes, 10 years AWS, TSSCI clearance, right? Like maybe on the team, there's a TSSCI cleared, software systems engineer, someone, an AWS SRE expert, and a CKAD who's, got a lot of hands-on experience with Kubernetes. The team can fill that role of a unicorn a lot better than an individual can.
Since we have a little sports theme going in this particular pod, what I see great sports organizations do is, in sports, there's a draft. So you're like usually drafting, let's say, college players or, someone from the minor leagues. You only get one first round pick, and that's where you can find someone usually with all these talents. But that's not all the talents that you need. Like you were saying, they have all 3 of them. They know everything. But most of your picks are people that do not have everything at once. So the organizations that I see are doing really well is they're finding people that have the ability to improve the fastest. So they have a growth mindset. They can take training. They can be twice as good next year as they were the year before. So that's just one thing for everyone to think about when hiring's really tough. Look for up and comers that can improve. That's actually probably the most important thing. One of our last topics here, so a lot of our guests that come on the show, they have a background in startups. In some aspects, you do Two, so if I said that the work you do for the government was kind of like building a startup for 350 million people, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, so it's the model that I think we need for the federal government to succeed and to start being as agile and nimble as the current challenges that face government and us as citizens and kind of consumers of the government's product, for lack of a better term, demand and require, is to have that kind of nimble startup mindset. Where I see our organization within SAIC and others like us that are starting to embrace this mentality, there's been a historical challenge of connecting commercial results out of Silicon Valley with the federal government, because just by nature of, we'll say the laws and regulations of the way the federal government does its budgeting and funding, 18-month funding cycles don't really jive with, a Series A funding raise in Silicon Valley. You're like, well, I'll get money 18 months from now, I promise. Right? And so there's always been this really challenging disconnect. And there's been a lot of cool effort in the federal government to engage better with Silicon Valley. But I think a more pragmatic bridge to close that gap is for the federal system integrators who have always supported federal government to start behaving and shaping more like a startup would, to the team of teams model being directly tied to a mission and purpose, being able to pivot and persevere or pivot and try a new business model if something's not working. So that's where I see kind of my responsibility within SAIC and the part I play in helping the federal government act and feel more like a startup is really pushing federal system integrators to look and feel more like a software startup.
I may have an outdated view on this, so hopefully I don't say something wrong, but usually when I think about the government, federal government, it's like, I think of their style being outdated or slow or like not where the coolest, newest practices are happening. Do you agree or disagree with that?
So I'd say, especially in the last, we'll say 5 to 10 years, and really pockets of Department of Homeland Security, and then really broadly across the DoD and IC, I've seen them really embrace and adopt more of a product mindset, which is starting to challenge and upset the status quo, even at the top levels. So you have folks like Paul Puckett at ECMA for the U.S. Army, Jay Bonsi and Lauren Nossenberger at U.S. Air Force, who are really pushing, changes and updates in policy to start to enable that on their side. There are certainly, muscle movements we can do on our side to help enable that and accelerate that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of that change does have to originate from the government itself.
But then I guess like on the flip side, what I'm saying, and I know, like I read some things from your website, some of the most interesting projects I think are happening in the government at the same time. Like this is like super interesting stuff. I don't even know what it fully means, but coordinating all these planes or battle tactics in real time and whatever, that's like, so the project spaces seems like really cool to me.
Yeah. And the kind of technology exposure there and the opportunity. And it's a natural kind of draw from a opportunity and engagement for folks who are really trying to be on the cutting edge from a technology standpoint, especially IT and OT convergence. So where does software meet wearables, meet data connectivity in austere locations? Like how do you handle those? Like IoT, having a smart thermostat is one thing. If I'm going to try and do Internet of Battlefield things, how am I going to equip a soldier, or how am I going to, clandestine way, right? Because we can't turn them all into homing beacons for enemy threats. But there's a lot of taking commercial problems, transposing that over the historical battle space that say the DoD or the IC or the federal government, and reimagining, getting back to first principles design thinking. So you're spot on. A lot of it might seem like it is a very historically jargon driven world in the federal government, but the technology and landscape, the best analogy to give is the financial and fintech world, right? The types of technologies that are pushing fintech forward is exactly what the federal government is investing in. And because it's the same problem with the added layer of having to do it afloat or in space or, in a mountain range somewhere in Asia.
Yeah. A lot of innovation going on in that space. So we're coming kind of towards the end here. What's the most interesting, I guess, project that you're working on at SAIC that you could talk about? What is the cool stuff you're doing?
Well, so the work we're doing, I guess, with the Air Force and Department of Defense in the cloud and DevSecOps space, I have the privilege of being the community practice leader for Air Force Cloud One program, which is, given my kind of values and principles on continual learning and really growing and democratizing knowledge across the entire defense industrial base, it's been an incredible privilege to be a part of the Cloud One program because we engage with hundreds of vendors, larges and smalls, in this defense space that are all trying to solve a wide variety. Some are mission systems, some are business systems, some are trying to do research and development on some of the new kind of exquisite problem sets of downrange and more, I guess, what's the best way I can put it? Multi-layered security, multi-level security of data interoperability. So the ability to not only function better as a business, the military being still, right? Military has HR, military has budgets and finance. They have all those same business systems they need to maintain. So there's that aspect. But the difference is those dimensions, HR, training and learning, and finance, directly impact our ability to defend and prevent and fight war if necessary. And so it's kind of an exquisite problem set, and it's just a really cool space to be in right now, given some of the thought leaders in DoD.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing a bit about what's going on. Last question. This is more of a fun question. Would you rather be a teacher or an entertainer?
So for me, that's a kind of an easy answer. My mom's a teacher after Marine Corps. My wife's a teacher. I always tell people I would be a teacher if it paid better. I know that sounds like a shallow response, but where I find real joy is learning a bunch of new things and then teaching people a bunch of new things. And so that's where I kind of am drawn to that team of teams model still, is the opportunity to continually learn myself, share my learnings with my teams. They do the same. They share their learnings with me. And so, a teacher, hands down, my dream job would be a teacher. If I ever can overcome my own personal woes and mismanagement of my own personal finances and get to an independent wealth point, then I will definitely retire and become a teacher.
Yeah, it's hard to say that you don't want to be a teacher after listening to this pod. As we've been talking about, you can kind of level up so many people. You can be a teacher both, in the traditional education aspect, but also for your team, make everybody better. So I'd have to say, as of right now, I'd want to be a teacher. I'm too introverted to be an entertainer. Let's go help everybody improve. Bob, I know that you are doing some hiring. If people that are listening want to check out a job opportunity to work for you or work on one of your team of teams, how can they do that?
Yeah, definitely. So if you check out the career and job opportunities at SAIC.com, anything that strikes your fancy there, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I pretty actively check in on LinkedIn, or if there's a Slack group that you want to invite me to on LinkedIn, I also collaborate in a lot of different Slack workspaces just to try and stay in touch with the community. So love to connect any and all avenues there. But yeah, we are constantly looking to grow our team model. I can guarantee you, if it's not Silence of the Lambdas or Insane Cloud Posse, there's a team we have here for you that's the right fit.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, check out Bob Ritchie on LinkedIn. We'll post the links in the career pages and all of that. Also, a quick reminder for our listeners, if you haven't already rated and reviewed the show on your podcasting app of choice, particularly Apple Podcasts, please do so. Reviews are a crucial way that our show gets discovered. Also, be sure to join the Dev Interrupted Discord community. That's where we keep this type of conversation going all week long. And also our first look at the Interact 2.0 conference on April 7th, 2022. Again, we have all the links in the description below, and catch you all next week. And Bob, thank you again for coming on.
Thanks so much, Ted. Take care.